Hello and greetings from Sarajevo.
Hello, welcome to module Evolving Cities Towards Healthy Future. Cities are constantly changing. As the foundation of human civilization, they are in strong symbiosis with nature, climate, culture, politics, economy. Various global and local challenges are responsible for their growth but also for their decline. Throughout history, cities have developed in different ways, experiencing their accelerated growth as in the period of industrialization or decadence in times of different crises. They have different reasons for existence. The changes are sometimes periodic and sometimes gradual, mostly uneven. In some cases, we can clearly see the mechanism created as a result of various social initiatives, while in others the changes come spontaneously, with difficult to notice connections. The causes that lead to these changes are different, from demographic trends, economic determinations, special planning decisions, and the like. City development planning is a complicated and difficult process to implement. The existing patterns of cities that have developed over the centuries often make it difficult for us to see the overall picture of the state in the area under consideration. We are witnessing seemingly uncontrolled patterns of development, which translate relation related to economy, sociology, anthropology, architecture, geography, and other sciences and disciplines into modern cities. The basic determinants of urban development can be identified through different historical periods, and the dominant processes within them can be observed. Dominant economic branches related to the appropriate historical moment influence the development of cities and thus their morphology. In certain periods and areas, cities were developed in the planned way, with a proper network of streets with a clear line between the city and village, or they went into opposition to these processes. However, the basic characteristic is the constant change of size, appearance, and organization. So, one of the basic questions related to the development of modern city is, what strategies are we developing today? We are witnessing that economic progress has brought great benefits to humanity, but that progress has come at a price. The mismatch between growing human needs and resource constraints is evident, increasingly resulting in concerns about the long-term sustainability of the way people earn and create added value. In response to the perceived dangers of the exploitation of natural resources and the growing pollution of the environment in the 20th century, the theory of sustainability emerged. By taking advantage of modernization and technological advances, we have significantly impacted the environment. Today, our urban environment, greatly altered by our actions, negatively affects our health as well. Of course, this is a complex issue. It is impossible to stop economic progress because it is a prerequisite for the civilization evolvement. However, such growth and development, based on uncontrolled use of natural resources, is not suitable for us, for a society, and for the entire planet Earth. Therefore, the growth and development of cities in their strategies must include awareness of the consequences of our activities in order to prevent negative outcomes and thus achieve harmonious development non-violent for the environment and stimulating for man. The evolution of cities must move towards a future that will result in the sustainability of the environment and the health of its inhabitants. The development of modern cities is accompanied by similar problems, often conditioned by the necessity of intervention within globalization processes, controlling the development of suburbs, the quality of public transport, the presence and development of public spaces, the necessity of connection cities are some of the key issues. On the example of the city of Sarajevo, various development leaps can be recognized related to the population, environment, technology, and social organization.
Global challenges can be seen on the local level, and at the same time local challenges can have greater implications. Construction of a coal power plant in Bosnia and Herzegovina will affect the quality of air in Italy, and yet the question remains, what can be done in order to reduce energy consumption when there is a constant need for more? One possible answer is to reflect on residential development in its relation to total energy consumption, agreed CO2 emissions by countries, and consequently health-related issues. According to some estimates, households in EU 28 countries are responsible for 1/4 of final energy consumption and in Bosnia and Herzegovina, residential sector participates up to 58.44% in total energy use. When one takes into account influence of transport in total energy use, which is 35% for IEA member countries, then we can easily see how important those two issues of residential infrastructure and transportation are. For those reasons, these topics will be further analyzed in respect to the city of Sarajevo, where along the historical axis we can see repercussions of the residential development and transport-related challenges. The modes of transport have historically had an immense impact on the urban form of the cities. These modes have changed and the cities thereafter. What has actually changed was the possibility to use different building typologies independent of their location. The positive aspect was in differentiating between living and working places, and the work in itself has changed thereafter. In the early history of Sarajevo, the main mode of transport was walking. This is easily recognizable when examining the extension of the historical core during the Ottoman period from 1463 to 1878. Everything was easily accessible by foot and up to 20 minutes of walking distance. The size of the population, together with the means of communication, allowed for a centrally located downtown consisting of public and commercial facilities. Low-density, single-family housing was located around the downtown in walking distance. In the beginning of the Austro-Hungarian rule, 1878, building of roads for horse carriages was one main activity in urban planning. During their rule, the industrialization began, followed the growing population called for the implementation of multi-family housing and development of mixed-use typologies. The commercial facilities were located in the ground floor of the tall new buildings. Public transport has evolved from the bigger horse carriage to individual transport, to the introduction of electric trams, which signified the growth and modernization of the city. After the Second World War, the number of motor cars slightly increased, while the public transport still remained the most important mode of transportation. The growing urban population of the time was accommodated in high-density neighborhoods, which are still located near the main transport nodes and axes. Following the industrial development in the 60s and 70s, there were several reasons for this partly uncontrolled urban expansion: improved accessibility of wider areas by the growing population and the increased number of cars, the political inability of creating enough living spaces for those urban migrants, and the absence of sustainability awareness at that time. The above-mentioned reasons also led to the prevailing construction of the single-family houses, which mainly contributed to the development of suburbs, disregarding the building regulations without any consideration for the environment. Single-family houses comprise of more than 90% of the total building stock in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is also the representative typology in the countries of the region. Not only is the dominant building typology in itself energetically insufficient due to, for instance, lack of thermal insulation and energy-efficient heating systems, it is not supported by communal infrastructure. The above-described historical development led to an urban expansion which triggered many challenges. The political and market-driven, mobility-driven, and mainly the energy consumption reasons behind the morphology of Sarajevo are interrelated and connected to the social development and behavior. Unplanned and informal development in the outskirts of the city started more than 50 years ago. The building stock erected after 1992 stands for 28.66% of the total number of dwellings. The vast majority of it, 71.91%, are single-family houses, which were built in the urban fringe and rural areas. This development, still based on the idea of wide area accessibility by private car, has two main reasons: political and economic. Intern displacement caused by the most recent war, combined with economically difficulties, has forced the people to find the solutions to sustain their existence and habitation on their own. Political unwillingness or helplessness to tackle these issues enable the escalation of the described unregulated building activities. Most of the presented data directs us to the necessary reactions and encourages us to work on a climate-neutral, energy-efficient society. This movement is, in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, accompanied by the national endeavor to join the European Union. A combination of necessity, unfortunate events, and political indifference were the reasons for the described development of Sarajevo, shown in the vast areas of arbitrarily located single-family houses and their quantitative and qualitative shortcomings. There are a number of challenges related to this kind of development, but one could argue that at least the individual's interest has a bigger impact. This individual freedom and choice, on the other hand, can be reached with better common solutions, which also have an adequate answer to the primarily raised questions, namely the location and related mobility issues, infrastructure, and creation of common spaces. Policies that include the appropriate quality of building regulations, housing policies, economic development, social services are creating the healthy cities.
The city of Sarajevo has based its previous urban morphological development on linear growth, where along one longitudinal axis development direction related to the historical epoch of origin and socio-political context can be observed. Contemporary Sarajevo expects spatial development through transversal directions. In that way, the contemporary context will rely on urban morphologies created under different conditions with different urban matrices and scales. A feature of the development of Sarajevo should be based on overlapping of old urban matrices with new development directions. Like so many times in history, cities facing development issues through overlapping of new contemporary urban scales and old patterns. In order for our cities to have a healthy future, it is essential to keep the focus on the people and the interconnectedness with the environment. It is crucial to understand the historical significance and development, context, and contemporary approach in creating healthy cities of a better future for all of us. The cities of futures include citizens with a reduced rate of chronic disease, crime, unemployment, and the like. The city, the place from which everything starts, in order to realize its potential in the next development leap, must take into account the health of the population. Linking urban and health planning is a basic starting point for all future strategies.
Thank you for listening
And attending this module.